When discussing the Kansas City Chiefs 2021 season and ultimately the 2021 outlook for them, it is a lot more complicated than just saying, okay, they have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and everyone else, and mainly a lot of offensive line acquisitions, and simply saying, you know what, they're good, let's just cancel the season, start in the AFC Championship game with the Chiefs, let the rest of the AFC play out, and see who they play in Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game to determine who loses against them to go to the Super Bowl. It is a lot more complicated than that, and honestly for the NFC side, it's a lot more complicated than who will play Tampa in the NFC Championship game and who will face the wrath of Tom Brady in the playoffs. Now, we are going to dive into everything for Kansas City for the 2021 season, as they are for sure going to have to face unforeseen obstacles. They are going to have to play somebody like Justin Herbert twice, who is expected to make a big leap in year number 2, and they are going to have to be able to go to the 4th straight AFC Championship game of the Patrick Mahomes era, which would be nothing short of spectacular. So we are going to dive into everything for the Kansas City Chiefs in their 2021 season. We are going to break down their schedule and how, honestly, it is not the easiest thing in the world for them, as they are going to start by playing 2 playoff teams from last year, and 2 teams that they ultimately did beat last year, and 2 teams that will be looking for revenge in the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, before we dive into everything with the Kansas City Chiefs, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as each only take a second to do, and it would be very much appreciated. Now, let's begin. So when taking a look at the Chiefs schedule, like we have for every other team that we've done a can they reach the Super Bowl and can they ultimately win the Super Bowl segment and video so far, we start by looking at the Chiefs' first 5 games, and they are by no means easy, as they start out versus the Browns, at the Ravens, versus the Chargers, at the Eagles, and then home against the Bills on Sunday night. So they obviously have the talent to beat everyone, and will they is another question, because I do think it is fair to say, and it is, that they have the talent to beat the Bucks, and they did last year in Tampa in December, ultimately losing in the one that mattered most. But the thing that needs to be said about the Browns, Ravens, really honestly everyone except the Eagles in these first 5 games, they have the talent to beat the Chiefs as well, and there are obviously going to be some things that need to go in their ways in order to beat the Chiefs, especially for the teams that are coming into Arrowhead, as Arrowhead will be at full capacity this year, as will every other stadium, by the way, and the Chiefs Stadium is notorious for being one of the most loud venues in the NFL, period. Not just, top 2 in the AFC West or top 2 in the AFC, but the top stadium in the NFL. Them in Seattle they've broke the record for loudest stadium. So for the Browns to come in week 1 with full capacity, coming off of a Super Bowl loss and ultimately a win that they had over the Browns in the playoffs last year, to say Arrowhead will be rocking in that game against Baker Mayfield and the gang would be an understatement. And the Chiefs obviously saw what happened to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, as we all did, and they did something that was extremely intelligent this offseason. They built around Patrick Mahomes and did everything they could to make sure that never happens again. And what I think would have been interesting to talk about is if there was a game after the Super Bowl, would Patrick Mahomes have played the next week? Anyways, getting back on track, versus the Browns and at the Ravens and versus the Chargers is about as hard of a start as you're going to find in the NFL. Thankfully for the Chiefs, they are 2 out of the 3 are home games, and they definitely have the potential to start 3-0. Now, what needs to be said is against the Patrick Mahomes-Lamar Jackson rivalry, Lamar will win a game at some point. Granted, Patrick is 3-0 against him now, but at some point, Lamar will win a game. And versus the Browns is obviously a hard start to the season, and the Chiefs obviously could be very sore after week 1. Obviously, every NFL team will be sore, not just them, the Ravens included. But will the Chiefs be able to win in Baltimore in week 2? Now, as we said, Lamar will win eventually, and it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be, honestly, maybe the best Sunday night game all year. Obviously, the Chiefs play the Bills later in the year, as we discussed, but Chiefs, Ravens, Chiefs, Bills, they're all fun to watch, and then they come home the next week and play the Chargers. So if they can start out 2-1, 3-0 would obviously be the best start, but if they can start out 2-1, which they very well can in the first 3 games, that would be the ideal start for the Chiefs to get back to the Super Bowl and ultimately to play in their 4th straight AFC Championship game. To quickly wrap up the first 5 games, it's not a complicated or controversial thing to say here. the Chiefs are more talented than the Eagles, and quite frankly, if the Eagles beat the Chiefs in week 4, I would be very surprised, and I will leave it at that. Versus Buffalo will be, like I said, versus the Ravens or the Bills is going to be probably the game of the year, and it's a game I am very much looking forward to sit on the couch from 1 to almost midnight on the East Coast here and watch football all day to be capped off by Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. It really does not get much better than that, so that will be a game I'm very much looking forward to. And the Chiefs, I do think the worst start that they'll have through 5 games is 3-2. Again, the absolute worst. Would not be surprised 4-1 or 5-0. So they have a week 12 bye, which means we are going to discuss the next 6 games leading up to that bye. And after the Bills, they play at the football team, at the Titans, versus the Giants, versus the Packers, at the Raiders, and versus the Cowboys. Now, we're going to kind of skip around here, but so the first one we're going to discuss is coming off the Monday night game against the Giants. They play the Packers, and this is a huge game because 2 years ago, we did not get to see Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes. This was shortly after Mahomes dislocated his knee, and it was Aaron Rodgers versus Matt Moore on Sunday night. So we never got to see that, and for this game's sake, I really hope we get to see Rodgers versus Mahomes. Now, obviously, there's a little more complicated things up in Green Bay right now, so again, we may not get to see Rodgers versus Mahomes, but on the bright side, we may get to see Rodgers versus Mahomes twice if he gets traded to Denver. Anyways, now we are going to go in order. At Washington it's going to be Chase Young and the defensive line versus the Chiefs. And what I would guess is how that game goes. I think they're going to take exactly what the Bucs did, run a bunch of stunts and get as much pressure on Patrick Mahomes as possible. And I would expect Tyreek Hill to have a big day because I would fully expect them to be running a lot of quick outs, slants, anything you can to beat man coverage. Because when you run blitzes like that, they are going to be probably they're going to be blitzing and they're going to have man coverage, tight man coverage. And because of that, that is where Tyreek Hill is going to feast. So if anybody wants to come back to this like October 18th area, I'm predicting Tyreek Hill to have a big day against the football team. And ultimately with the game changes and everything that they've had to study this offseason from that Bucs game, I do expect the Chiefs to beat the football team. At Tennessee, again, I do think the Chiefs win. Could Derrick Henry have a huge day? Yes, but I still have concerns about Tennessee's pass rush. Versus the Giants on Monday night is honestly unfair for the Giants to come into Arrowhead and play the 3-time back-to-back AFC Championship game Chiefs, back-to-back AFC champs. It's pretty unfair for them with Daniel Jones to come in and honestly expect them to win. It's, like I said, probably not going to happen. Would be very surprised if it did. Versus Green Bay, I would also expect the Chiefs to win that one. Again, they're just a very complete football team, and there's a reason why they've went to 3 straight AFC Championship games, and it's a lot more than just Patrick Mahomes running around making plays and throwing no-look passes and throwing passes with his left hand. There's a reason for that. And then the final 2 games before the bye are at the Raiders and versus the Cowboys. I would be surprised if they drop either one. Could see them losing to the Raiders, as the Raiders, shout out the Raiders. They beat them last year in Arrowhead, so could see them losing. But again, going into the bye, I expect them to be at worst probably 8-3, which sets them up for a very good chance to have a very good second half of their season and to get the number 1 seed and have yet again another bye week. So predicting the Chiefs start out at worst 8-3, again, they could be 9-2 or 10-1. I personally doubt they start out 11-0, but their final 6 games are versus the Broncos, versus the Raiders, at the Chargers on Thursday night, versus the Steelers, at the Bengals, and at the Broncos. So I think these final 6 games are going to benefit the Chiefs. These final 6 games are not exactly hard. They have a few tough games, don't get me wrong, but they are not versus the Bills, at the Ravens, at the Browns, at anybody else, right? These are not that difficult of games for them to win. And I would expect the Chiefs to, at worst, go 5-1 during the stretch. It's just a matter of picking which one they would lose. At the Chargers on Thursday night, the 2 Thursdays before Christmas is going to be, again, another great game to watch for NFL fans. Personally, one I'm very much looking forward to. But I would expect the Chiefs to, having the schedule at worst, finish 13-4. And that is at worst because of how just dominant they are of a roster. And 13-4 is honestly putting it lightly. If they go 15-2, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. So having said that, now we have to discuss the playoffs. And if they do go 15-2, I do think they will have, not surprisingly, the number 1 seed and finish with the top seed and have the bye week that is coveted by everybody in the AFC. So having said all of this and looking at the Chiefs 2021 schedule all up and down, I would be pretty shocked if they don't have the number 1 seed and have that exclusive first round bye. And what's going to probably happen in the 20s is the Chiefs will more than likely be the 2010s Patriots, where they're going to go to the AFC Championship game more than likely every single year, or at least the divisional round every single year. I don't see a team this year. I mean, 6 months changed things, but who's going to go into Arrowhead in the divisional round of the playoffs and knock off the Chiefs after they've had a week of rest and after the team that would be coming in just had to have a dogfight of a win in the wild card round? It's going to be tough for any team, right? Let alone a team that's coming off of that. So I would be pretty shocked looking at the Chiefs' schedule if they don't, at minimum, go to the AFC Championship game. They are that good, and they invested a lot into the offensive line to ensure Patrick Mahomes stays up and healthy. So, and by the way, that's not only going to benefit Patrick, I do think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have a terrific second season in the NFL. So what we're saying is, the question, can the Chiefs win the Super Bowl? Well, they can certainly get there, and I would be genuinely surprised if they're not at minimum in the AFC Championship game. And to be honest, if they're healthy, as long as like Tyreek, Travis, and someone else doesn't get hurt big, I would be surprised if they don't at minimum get to the AFC Championship game. And I think it would be kind of a bust of a season for them if they didn't. So what we're saying is, yes, they will probably get to the Super Bowl, and hopefully it's a rematch. Hopefully Patrick can get Tom, and Patrick's only 2 playoff losses ever are against Tom Brady. So it would be very cool for Patrick to get Tom back at least once in the playoffs. Now, he did beat him in the regular season last year in December. Obviously, Patrick would trade that in 100 times for a Super Bowl win, but I do think the possibility of a repeat this year is very high, and I think it is the highest possibility of a repeat that we've had since the Broncos and Seahawks back in 2013-14 area. I genuinely thought heading into the 2014 season that we were going to have a repeat, and we almost did, but I do think this year the possibility of a repeat is extremely high, and we will soon find out if that is the case. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you ever have a video suggestion, please let me know and comment it down below. And until next time, have a great rest of your day. Love you guys. Deuces. Peace.